Hello, everybody, and happy Tuesday. I hope you guys are all doing great, and thank you so much for tuning in for another episode of Let's Talk About Shh. For anybody joining us for the very first time, Let's Talk About Shh is a live podcast where we talk about love, intimacy, relationships, and everything that goes along with that. So, who am I? My name is Tila. I'm a sex educator, relationship expert, and published author. I love talking about sex because I love helping people connect with that part of themselves. Lots of people are embarrassed or struggle when it comes to sex, intimacy, and relationships, and it does not have to be as hard as it is for some people. So I'm all about the educating, all about helping people connect with that part of themselves. So, as I mentioned, this is a live podcast, and that means that your comments and your thoughts and your input matters. This is a format where your comments will show up in the video feed, as well as we do accept live callers to the show. So just a couple of guidelines. We want to make sure everybody's having fun, having a good time, learning lots. So just a reminder for everybody, there's no such thing as a stupid question. If somebody asks something or calls in for advice, or ask for guidance on a particular thing and it seems super easy to you, be supportive. Lots of people have varying levels of experience and knowledge in this area, and we want everybody to feel comfortable and awesome about asking questions to the things that they really need answered. Make sense? All right, so how is everybody doing today? Hey Amanda, I love that you say hello every day. It makes me smile. Just making sure all of our feeds are up. It looks like we're good to go. Oh, quite a few people tuned in today so far, so that's good. So today we're continuing on with our topic of the week, which of course is gender equality and sexism, because those things are kind of tied together. And today's topic is all about sexual objectification. Now, hopefully the person who requested this is tuned in, but if not, I guess they'll catch the replay. So, when we're talking about sexual objectification, what does that mean? Sexual objectification is when people view themselves as objects, or like for objects for use, instead of as human beings. And this can be done through the self. People can self-objectify, or they can be objectified by somebody else. Now, this can happen to a person of any gender, but it typically and most commonly happens to women. So, it's pretty prevalent actually in our society for women in particular to be objectified. And we see this in advertisements and how women are presented in TVs and movies. Lots of advertisements are based around exploiting the sexuality of women. So, there's that saying, sex sells. And, often advertisers will use the sexuality of a woman to sell a product, even if that product has little to nothing to do with sex, sexuality, relationships, intimacy, any of that. And it is so prevalent in our society that we're so commonplace that we're used to seeing it pretty much everywhere. And this has actually led to some pretty big issues. Now, if you're like, wait a minute, I don't remember seeing any of those things. I don't know what you're talking about. Think about any of those ads where you've seen a scantily clad a woman blowing a kiss or looking seductively at the camera, draped over a car. There's actually a couple of photographers have actually recreated advertisements putting men into those same poses. I don't know if you guys have seen this online. I've seen it a bunch of times. It always cracks me up because it looks kind of silly when you put a man into that pose. Hey Maureen, thanks for checking in and saying hey. But yeah, so it's very prevalent. A study at Wesleyan University, they looked at print media and how women were portrayed in print media. And they analyzed 58 different magazines, and they found that women were portrayed as objects in about 51.8% of advertisements in these print magazines. And in men's magazines, women were objectified 76% of the time. That is huge. You know, like that's a lot. So how does this affect us? What effect does it have on our society, on how we interact with each other, on our self-esteem? And the answer is it actually has some really, really big and potentially devastating effects. So for women, this constant hypersexualization actually impacts mental health quite a lot. There's, a lot of reports from women about high levels of anxiety regarding their appearance, and this can manifest in a lot of different ways. It can manifest as shame, eating disorders, low self-esteem, and in some cases, depression. And in other cases, a combination of a bunch of those. So women have a tendency, well, not have a tendency, but women are quite negatively impacted by this constant sexualization of women everywhere they look. Because everywhere they look, there's this ideal woman, and it causes, when other women see a woman being objectified, it can actually cause the woman to self-objectify and sort of be a lot more critical of their appearance. Like, well, I don't look like that, so I must not be good. Similar thoughts like that. And this has a huge impact. Like, only 11% of girls and women report seeing themselves as beautiful. And when looking at girls and young adults, 6 out of 10 girls actually avoid participating in life activities because of concerns of the way they look. So they're missing out on things, they're choosing not to participate because they don't want to be ridiculed, or they feel they would be ridiculed, or it makes them very self-conscious about themselves, which of course continues to negatively impact their mental health. There was another study that was done that asked a sample of women to install an app on their phone that would randomly prompt them for their mood. And they also had to log any instances in which they were objectified, things like being catcalled or hit on or whistled at or whatever, anything like that. And the study found that when the women were objectified, it actually led them to be a lot more critical of their appearance. And not just that, but it also impacted their feelings of safety and well-being. So it's a big thing. And when we live in a world where women are constantly objectified, like I said, in men's magazines, it's like 76% of the time, that constant reminder is going to continually erode women's self-confidence in themselves, which is unfortunate. There's also another big link for sexual objectification, and it's a very important one because it's actually linked to domestic violence and violence against women. And when we have, just the way that women are presented as objects and the frequency in which this occurs actually causes several problems that can result in violence. See, when women are only shown women as objects and they don't have any other basis for experience, lots of men consume lots of porn, with nothing wrong with that necessarily, but porn tends to objectify women quite heavily. When they see women being objectified by other men that they know, by the media, it's portrayed playful and fun in, comedies. There's this constant message that women are objects. And when men are constantly receiving that message and when they internalize that message, they're less likely to extend any empathy towards women. I mean, we don't really think of extending empathy to an object. You don't think of that chair, how's that chair going to feel when you sit in it? Or, how does your phone feel about being dropped? We don't think about things like that. And when men are taught only to think of women as objects, the idea of considering how that woman feels is not even a consideration, because we don't consider the feelings of objects, right? Does that make sense? You guys with me so far? How are we feeling? So when you have a culture where men are constantly pushed to score, or pursue women or successfully pursue women, and their manhood, so to speak, is defined by their sexual conquest and their prowess, being rejected by someone that is seen as an object can be even more threatening. Let's go back to like the example of, an object like a chair, right? So if we were to take the similar scenario and apply it to the chair. So imagine there was this chair that everyone thought was the best, and it was worth the ultimate prestige and like envy of your peers to sit in this chair. Like sitting in this chair would make you the top dog, and make you practically a god in the eyes of your peers, or at the very least, an equal. And we all crave acceptance. We all crave to be seen as either equal or better than our peers. Whether we acknowledge it or not, this is something we all want. And so if you're prevented from sitting in that chair, there's a good chance you're going to feel resentful. I mean, here it is, your social standing being threatened by something as simple as sitting in a chair. And you can't do it for some reason. You're not allowed to do it. And it's funny, anger at being ridiculed, even when it's perceived, like it's perceived ridicule and not actual ridicule, when we feel that we are being seen as less in the eyes of our peers, it's really easy for us to be angry and resentful, and some people have a tendency to lash out. Particularly if they haven't been taught to channel that anger and resentment in healthier ways, if they don't have another way to release that anger, they're more likely to lash out. And so people may lash out of that chair. I mean, why not? It's the cause of the ridicule, right? If it wasn't for not being able to sit in this chair, there would not be any ridicule. Has no feelings, it's just a chair. It's only an object. So there should be no reason why you can't sit in the chair. And there's nothing wrong with you. So it must be the chair. But the chair has made you look foolish to all your peers. So no object can be worth as much as you as a human being that is worthy of respect. Now, I know this is an oversimplified example, or way of stating it, and not something that most of us think about consciously. But it's basically the path that can lead many men to perpetuate violence against women, particularly in the face of rejection. So sexual objectification can be quite harmful in a lot of different ways. Because the other thing too, when it comes to men and their relation to women, is when you think of something like an object, you don't think about emotional attachment. You don't think about, how you can emotionally attach to this object, or you don't think about ways that you can connect with an object in a fulfilling way. And objects for most people are things that are meant to be used, right? So when we encourage men to think of women as objects, we're not only, perpetuating the chances of domestic violence, but we're also keeping men from forming romantic attachments that have an emotional component. Does that make sense? You guys still with me here? How are we doing? Are you thinking about your chair that you're sitting in, if you're sitting? Does it have any feelings? So a common way that women are often objectified is catcalling. Now, lots of people say that catcalling is a compliment. It's meant all in good fun. There's no harm in it. But there is. Catcalling is actually illegal in some countries. It carries a hefty fine. There was a woman who started an Instagram. I can't remember the Instagram handle. It's on my website though. I wrote an article about it. But there's a woman who started an Instagram account that she, every time she was catcalled, she would take a picture with the person who catcalled her and caption what they had said. And it's clear in many of the pictures that the guys are like super jazzed to be taking a picture with this chick. They don't see any harm in it. But some of the comments were inherently harmful. And it was actually through her doing this that she managed to push for catcalling to become a finable offense. I believe that's in the Netherlands, if I'm not mistaken. And the reason catcalling is detrimental is because it does that objectification, right? Where it makes women feel bad about themselves, typically speaking, or it causes them to be critical of their appearance. Sometimes well, I'm not going to say sometimes, a good portion of women tend to feel unsafe when they are catcalled because there's no way to know, the man who's catcalling her, there's no way to know if he's going to be violent. There's no way to know if he's going to pursue it any further. I mean, there's lots of news reports of women who were followed and attacked and brutalized for failing to respond to catcalling. There was, I shared it on my social media a little while ago, but there was a case of an 18-year-old who was punched unconscious. She was punched in the face, unconscious, for politely declining a catcaller. So when incidents like that happen, catcalling is it's not fun, it's not harmless. It tends to make women feel unsafe because there is actually a lot of men out there who will actually make it unsafe for women. And I know somebody's probably being like, oh, well, not all men are like that. Yes, not all men are like that. But the woman on the street has no way of knowing if that man is someone who's going to hurt her or someone who is just making her feel unsafe and not considering her feelings. Now, I know a lot of people will say, oh, but catcalling is fun and people should be flattered that you're being catcalled. It's not a compliment. Most women do not appreciate it. Like, I'd say the majority of women do not appreciate it. I have come across one or two women in my time who've said that they like being catcalled, and we're going to talk about that in a few minutes, but the majority of women do not enjoy it. It is a reminder that they are judged for their appearance, that they cannot safely move through public spaces. So it's a constant reminder of their own vulnerability. So please don't catcall. If you are interested in a woman and you think she's beautiful and you want to pay her a compliment, walk up and pay her a compliment. You know, it's not hard. It's a lot nicer than whistling or yelling, "Hey baby," or yelling whatever you're going to yell. Marine's saying that there's been a lot done to me and catcalling has made her feel unsafe. Yeah, thank you for chiming in on that. You know, like most women do not enjoy being catcalled. And if you, like I said, if you want to pay a compliment, pay a compliment, you know? Compliment what she's wearing, compliment her shoes, compliment her beautiful smile, whatever it is, and then leave it at that. Or just do not say anything and appreciate her beauty and move on. Because if you're not willing to take her feelings in consideration, then, I mean, just do us all a favor and just don't say anything. So I mentioned that I've come across a few women who have said that they enjoy catcalling and that they enjoy being catcalled. And when I say few women, I mean like out of all the women I've ever spoken to about this, which has been a lot, I would say like probably 2 in 100 have told me that they've enjoyed being catcalled. It is not frequent, so keep that in mind. But the reason that they enjoy it is because there's a difference between objectification and empowerment. And the difference is consent and choice. So, sexual objectification, there is a lighter side of it. It can be fun when someone chooses to be objectified. And the circumstances around that are going to be varying and really depend on individual people. I'm not saying being catcalled too many times, especially by drive-by cars, and made me jump out of my skin. Oh, that is the worst. Yes. Drive-by catcallers, the absolute worst. I maintain that people who drive by and catcall, your only purpose in doing that is to assert your dominance and control, because it's not leading to any kind of positive interaction. The person who's walking, when you're driving by, they have no way of seeing you. They have no way of knowing who you are. There is no way that they can, it's just the only outcome is it makes people uncomfortable. And so I gotta believe that the people know that, if you're gonna drive by catcalling, you are doing it because you are making people deliberately uncomfortable. There's nothing else to be said about it. I'd love, if you disagree, please comment, or better yet, call in. But the reality is that it's not a compliment. It just makes people feel uncomfortable. But yeah, so like I was saying, there's a difference between objectification and empowerment. And the difference is kind of subtle for some people, because you may see a woman who is dressed up and looking awesome, and she's feeling great about herself, and she doesn't mind that compliment. Why? Because she is dressed in that way to, she's feeling it, right? And that's the difference, is that it's her consent. She's consenting to that. Now, you can't make the assumption that every person who is dressed up is consenting. They may not be dressed up for you. They could be dressed up for something completely different, or someone completely different. And you know what? When that person pays them a compliment, they'll probably love it, and it'll probably feel really good. But some random stranger that they don't know, they're not dressed up for you, right? Empowerment is a good thing. People can be empowered and take control of their bodies and experience it in a way that is positive, that's going to build their self-esteem, that's going to build their confidence. And the thing is that, I guess the easiest way to explain the difference is that somebody's body becomes sexual when they are turned on, not when someone else is. When they are taking control of their own sexuality and their own sexual power, that is empowerment, okay? When someone else is attempting to do the same, that is objectification. Does that make sense? Are you guys following me on this? Yes, no, maybe so. I know it's a difficult concept for a lot of people to wrap their heads around, especially when we have all these images of women being objectified and women being shown that they like being objectified. I mean, we see this all the time in TV and movies, not to mention porn. So it's a difficult message for a lot of people to understand, because we don't really have a lot of positive examples of it. But like I said, the key thing is that somebody's body becomes sexual when they are turned on, not when someone else is. And that is the primary sticking point of sexual empowerment, right? Somebody controlling their own sexuality, not someone else interpreting or trying to take control of that sexuality for them. Now, there are circumstances in which somebody might surrender their sense of sexuality to someone else deliberately with intent to be objectified. and enjoy it. That's usually things that might happen in a role play situation. You see this quite a lot in BDSM activities. When people are role playing, there's a lot of activities where people are, like turned into furniture, and that's part of the role play, where they become a stool or, a table for their master or mistress. Those are some examples of ways that people play with the idea of objectification where it doesn't have a negative effect. Overall, sexual objectification is more damaging than it is good. If you're going to play with it or want to play with it, what do I say all the time? Clear communication is so important. Clear communication and good boundaries. That's going to make all the difference in whether or not objectification is going to make somebody feel good or make them feel like absolute crap and impact their long-term mental health. Does that make sense? How are you feeling, everybody? Feeling okay? Does anybody have any questions about anything I've said so far, or sexual objectification in general? Nothing coming through. Always got to remember that delay. Okay. Well, I could go on, but I feel like it would just be sort of repeating my point. So I think we will leave it there unless anybody has any questions or thoughts. Doesn't appear so. Okay. So we will be back again tomorrow, June 17th at 8 p.m. Pacific time, 11 p.m. Eastern. And we'll be continuing on with our exploration of sexism and how it impacts gender equality. If you're looking for more information, you can always check out my website, exploresextalk.com. And I also have my Sexy Hero Society, which is for people who really want to take their sex life to the next level. It's $20 Canadian every month and gives you extra access to lots and lots of content like relationship challenges and sex positions and coloring pages and games and all sorts of fun stuff. So definitely check that out. Thanks everybody so much for tuning in today. I hope you enjoyed this episode on sexual objectification. Tomorrow we are going to be talking about toxic masculinity. So that's going to be a good one. Make sure to tune in for it. Yeah, you guys, thanks so much again, and everybody have a fantastic night.